Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, whether you're tuning in on the radio dial here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM. We welcome you all back to our show, as well as tuning in through our online affiliates around the world. We're glad to have all of you with us as well. You know, our next guest is not only someone I've had the opportunity to speak to before on this program, but someone who I'm glad to call a friend. We're excited to welcome back to our show author Gary Kaschak. He's an author of a book that I really fell in love with called LIFESTONE, but he's also written other work as well, like Hands That Break, Hands That Heal, and The Hold to China. Well, he's gearing up for a big release in 2018. We're going to talk to him about that, but also the success of his previous 3 books. Also, someone who was able to work with Gary on the first 3 books is his editor, Nick Marco. He's joining us for this conversation as well. We'll talk to Nick not only about how the two of them met, but also what it's been like for him to see the response to the books as well. Now, just on hearing about Gary, we'll tell you at the end of our segment how you can stay connected with him as well as the new project. But Nick, Gary, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Hi, Cyrus.
Hello.
Glad to have the two of you on with us for sure. And Gary, I'm going to start with you. I mean, it's been a little while since you've been on the show with us, but you have definitely been staying busy for sure. As I said, you have a brand new book coming out in 2018. But what has it been like for you, Gary, to be able to kind of reflect on this literary journey you've had so far and the lives you've touched through your work so far?
Well, that was what I thought was missing in the workplace of books when I first wrote my 2 young adult novels several years ago. Inspirational endings with unlikely young characters making their way into the world and making a difference. And I didn't really see that in any of the books in the bookstore, so I innocently began writing a story. My first one, based upon a young girls volleyball team I was coaching, and that's how it began for me.
Yeah. Could you have imagined in the beginning, Gary, that you would be able to, now already 3 books out and gearing up for the 4th, that you would be able to strike a chord with readers and to be able to have readers that would be looking forward to your next work?
I had no idea what to imagine in the beginning. I was as green as could be when it came to the way the book industry worked. Like a lot of writers who decide to write a book, you just think you're going to connect with someone and be able to get it published. But it was, from where it started to where it is mind-boggling, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, Nick Marco was your editor for the first 3 books, the books that I had a chance to read. And, Nick, we welcome you to the program. It's your first time on with us. Since it is your first time, why don't we start off with how Gary and you got together to work together?
Well, we got together through a website that connects authors and editors. And when I saw Gary's work, or a sample of it so far, I noticed some things immediately. I mean, here was a man who knew how to write not only for the heart, but to write for the heart without insulting the head. His writing isn't sappy. His writing doesn't play on cheap emotions. And I recognize in him a terrific storyteller. And by storyteller, I mean an author who knows how to create real characters, who are engaged in real conflicts, and who have real difficulties solving them, and who face real opponents, including villains and forces that are quite formidable and not easy to defeat. And also, I recognize somebody who's has a sense, as all really good storytellers do, of how much to tell people. Somehow, in every side of every great storyteller is someone who's has a great voice for accounting events, but two, has a sense of a reader out there and how much to tell them. And great storytellers preceded many thousands of years ago anybody who knew how to put something on paper or chisel it on stone. So when I see someone who's a great storyteller, he may have grammatical problems or difficulty. I don't care. I'm interested in somebody who has that sense, that gut sense of how to tell a story, and this man did, and so I said, wow, I want to work with him, and so that's how we got together, and how it's gone.
Yeah. Gary, when you hear comments like that, like what Nick just made, and I know he's not the only one that told you about, they've seen something in your writing, how does that make you feel about the amount of time, of course, that goes into each book, but knowing that there are people out there that appreciate what you have been able to give readers?
Well, thank you, Nick, by the way, for everything you just said. I of course, I've heard similar things from my mother and a few people in the family, but to come from an editor with the background that Nick has is, I've got goosebumps at the moment from that. I learned as well from Nick so much with his coaching through me to me from his perspective and how to make everything I had written better. And he always made me feel exactly what how he just explained it to everyone. I didn't feel like a novice. I felt like he was there to guide and direct. And I'll tell you what, if you or anyone looks at the first book and take it all the way through to this fourth book, I can absolutely, unequivocally say that a lot of my the pattern that I have in my writing and the better writing that I've done is really directly to him.
Wow, for sure. Now, Nick, I mean, since it is your first time on the program, I need to ask you, I mean, what is it that led you toward editing? I mean, what is it that made you say you wanted to be a part of storytellers like Gary's lives?
Well, essentially, I could have gone two routes. I've got a master's in creative writing from Johns Hopkins and on a teaching fellowship. And like the rest of the folks in that program, I could have gone into academe and taught writing, but I don't like academe. And it took me a while to find my way, and the Internet's made it possible so that I could, without entering a classroom, work with truly motivated writers on projects that they had in mind, and most people like Gary who take the time to write books, I admire tremendously because they've got full-time jobs. How in the world they ever find the time to write, let's say, something as massive as LIFESTONE, which is an incredible epic bridging contemporary America and the Civil War. Large-scale projects like that, they excite my admiration, and it's different from working in a classroom with 95% of the people who don't really want to be there, and you have to take a course. And so through the Internet, I was able to connect with scores and scores of authors and work with them. And so that's something I really enjoyed doing. I've also written 17 books myself that have not been self-published, and some for nonprofits and others. And so this is just a natural flow, and I just enjoy working with people as gifted and motivated as Gary Kaschak.
Well, Gary, we're going to talk more about that motivation for sure. And Nick mentioned the book LIFESTONE. I want to talk a bit about that. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, either on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. We're excited to welcome back to our program today author Gary Kaschak, as well as editor Nick Marco. We're talking with him not only about Gary's journey, which Nick has been a part of, the first three books that he's written, including my personal favorite, LIFESTONE. We're about to talk more about that. But we've also talked more about how Nick and Gary were able to connect each other, the role the Internet played in that, but also the work that Nick has been able to do. So, Gary, to talk about LIFESTONE, there are so many great lessons in this book, and I had mentioned to you when you and I reconnected after a break, in our communicating with each other. I told you this year that I'm the type that when I read a book, especially if I'm interviewing the guest, the author, I make notes in my book. So, of course, my book LIFESTONE has my notes in it. And one of the things I thought about when I was prepping for this particular conversation is not only does the book move, do you give us the action there, do you give us these characters, but you give us some great messages along the way. Did you go into LIFESTONE knowing that was going to be a part of it? Not only a great story, but also great lessons that the reader could take away.
I think I've had that in the back of my mind as a natural thing for me to do in my writing. For example, my favorite television shows have always featured something spiritual or supernatural, the underdogs coming through, and so I didn't go out of my way to create messages. It just was a natural thing for my writing and my way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite quotes that I had made a note of from the book, I think, is one that all of us can kind of think about. And the character says to each other, some promises need to be broken. Sometimes the truth and doing justice are more important than keeping a promise. And I think, for people to really think about that, especially as you're reading the book, to think about how that is true. Justice is one of the things that definitely comes up in the book. Is that one of the things that you appreciate, Gary, about writing fiction, that you are kind of in control of the direction of what happens and also the outcome?
Oh, absolutely. My favorite part in writing fiction is creating the characters and then the subsequent dialogue that follows. Included within that, as far as dialogue goes, is being conscious of your characters, that they all don't have the same level of education, they don't all speak the same, and as you create these characters and find out more about them through your own self, you fall into them and you become each one of them. So it's a fantastic feeling to escape into that world once you get rolling on this.
Yeah. Nick, I want to go back to you. You had also was singing the praises of LIFESTONE. What were some of the things that really struck you about that particular book?
Well, one thing is that, and I think it's very important, is that it has all sorts of lessons about social justice, about civil rights, and others. But one thing that impressed me is that it's, as I can put it, more human than it is overtly political. And I've always felt that if I have to agree with either your politics or your spiritual beliefs in order to think that a story is well told or a piece of writing is good, then it's probably not. And it's probably more propaganda than it is storytelling. And as Gary indicated, his work is not preachy, and it presents the lessons that it has to teach. It doesn't hammer away at them, but it illustrates them through character analysis, through character development, through the outcome of events. And again, this is putting storytelling first, so that anyone who reads it, it will feel something of the humanity of the characters in conflict and the suffering that comes through slavery and the triumph over all of the obstacles that the heroine and the characters also who are looking back into her history represent, and also mystery there. So this is something very impressive and something that many writers just simply don't have the instinct or the talent to do as Gary does.
Right. for sure. And Gary, to the point that Nick just made, especially, about rights, I think, I should say, even though you're, as I said, gearing up for book number 4, you didn't stop writing after LIFESTONE. You've been doing other things. Was it something that you missed, though, being able to tell a story like you told with LIFESTONE? Was that something that you missed when it came to storytelling?
Well, when I penned the last word to LIFESTONE, I wasn't elated. I was a little bit sad. I did not want that book to end, and so the mixed emotions of that were hard to. It was hard to duplicate. The thinking of the next book that I would write that would ever come close to matching what I felt I had accomplished with LIFESTONE, but it didn't deter me. I have many ideas for books, and I believe at last check I have started 6 or 7 with maybe 100 pages each, but haven't fallen in love with any of them to continue to finish until the 4th book came along. But there was a gap there of several years, 7, 8 years of not writing the way I had with LIFESTONE and the 2 other books, where I had I was very disciplined with writing at the same time every day, and be it 1 page or 2 pages or a couple of paragraphs. But I kept it going, and then life just got in the way a little bit and slowed me down with my book writing. But I did get into a few other things with my writing, and here it is now. We're back together, so it's come full circle.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that full circle for sure. I have one of the things I've been very honest with my audience about over the years, and I have authors like you, Gary, to thank for this, because I interview a lot of authors in particular, and one of the things I've found as a message, especially when it comes to the idea of mindfulness and appreciation, is being able to realize the importance of the moment, of not thinking so far ahead, but appreciating where you are. When it came to thinking about what would be the next book and having the opportunity that you have now for the new release, what was it like for you to appreciate what you had been able to do and now to be able to literally add a chapter to your career?
Well, like I said earlier, one thing just leads to the other. I'm very mindful of the path that I've have taken here to get to this point. I am thankful, to be honest with you, that the time has enabled me to refresh and to remember and to try again.
Yeah. So take us into the new book, Gary. How did the book come about, the new one?
Well, this is I had been on a committee several years ago trying to get a baseball player, a deaf-mute baseball player, into the Baseball Hall of Fame. His name is Hoy. It was called Dummy Hoy. Everybody back there then had a name. Hoy is known in baseball circles as the man who likely invented the hand signals that the umpires use. I fell into this from an essay contest from one of the local schools that had my 2 books as mandatory reads for their students. One of the winning essays was written by a young man whose hero was this Dummy Hoy. So I followed the Dummy Hoy story because I was really interested in it, and before long had connected with the 8 or 9 other enthusiasts across the country who also were following Hoy. So in my research, baseball, and I became the main researcher for the group. I began having a series of dreams over a 3-week period dealing with my baseball playing days as a boy, ages 8, 9, 10, 11, and so on. And they spun like movies to me, and before long I was able to induce these dreams. Before I went to bed, they actually were recreated every night. And because of that, I started taking notes to them, not thinking for a minute that I was going to write a book. I just wanted to remember what I had dreamed. And before long, these dreams dealt with myself as a young boy, really believing that I was Mickey Mantle. I decided that I'm going to write a book.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And now here we are preparing for the release in 2018. We're going to let our audience know how they can stay connected with you, Gary. But, Nick, I want to go to you because one of the things that you mentioned to me is that, as I said earlier, you worked with Gary on his first 3 books. You did not work on editing this 4th book that's coming out in 2018, but you got a chance to read some of it. What were your thoughts about it?
I read what I think Gary's told me constitutes the last chapter, and it has to do with a trip he made to Cooperstown to the Baseball Hall of Fame, but it doesn't stop there. I mean, Gary is not the average tourist. The memories that this evoked in him, the thoughts about baseball and many other things, it just suffused with these kinds of reminiscences and insights. And, by the way, I want to congratulate you again, Gary. I already have on your achieving non-subsidized publication. And how to do that is something that I also teach writers, because these days you've got to be an agent yourself in order to get an agent. And sometimes if you know how to work the publishing game, and Gary was saying a while ago that very few people do know how, and it's such a puzzle and so many hoops you got to jump through, and I teach people how to do that. So this is a tremendous achievement that few people enjoy. But the book, this is, Gary has grown so much as a writer over the years. We've been working together about a decade, I guess, or more. I don't know, but here's a chapter that, frankly, I couldn't find anything really that I'd want to change. And if the rest of the book is of that caliber, and I can only assume that it is, readers are in for a tremendous experience with this book.
Well, it gives us something to look forward to. Congratulations to you, Gary, on what you've been able to do as a storyteller for sure. And definitely, as I've said before, I've enjoyed your previous work. Definitely looking forward to this new work for 2018. Let our audience know, Gary, how they can stay connected with you and also when they should expect the new book.
Okay. Well, I have a website, GaryDKaschak.com. It's GaryDKaschak.com. I also have an email, gkaschak@comcast.net, gkaschak@comcast.net, and a Facebook page as well. This next book is due out originally in May, but the publisher contacted me a week ago and asked me to get everything in by the end of the year because he wants it out in time for spring training baseball. So the new publication date is February 22nd. I thought it was a wise decision. Lots of baseball books do come out right at the same time, and I think now more than ever, this trade that was just made between the New York Yankees and the Marlins with acquiring Giancarlo Stanton. Well, between the two players, Stanton and Judge on the Yankees, they're now comparing them to Mantle and Maris, the last two people to have hit 50 home runs in the same season for one team. My book is a Mickey Mantle book, and I'm really happy that the trade has happened because I believe Mickey Mantle's name is going to be in the news for the entire 2018 season.
Wow. So it definitely gives us something to look forward to early in 2018. That is exciting news, Gary. Thank you so much for that. And Nick, thank you so much for being on with us as well. How can our audience stay connected with you?
Well, I appreciate being on here, Cyrus. Thanks a lot. I'm on Facebook as Nicholas Marco, M-A-R-C-O, spelled Nicholas. And you can also read me find me on good old AOL at JTJMarco, no spaces, at AOL.com, or JTJMarco at live.com. You can reach me there, too. So, I appreciate that. And it's interesting that I wrote an article years ago for a newspaper about Mickey Mantle myself many, many years ago. And so it was interesting to hear that Gary was writing about him, and I'm sure he's written tremendously well about him.
Yeah. Well, definitely something that we can look forward to. Gary, Nick, thank you all so much again. Really appreciate the time, and looking forward to our next conversation together.
Cyrus, thanks so much. Nick, great to hear your voice, and thanks for everything both of you said.
No, thanks so much to you both. Pleasure being on here.
Oh, the pleasure is definitely all mine, and we thank you, our audience, for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. If you all came in late, you missed part of the conversation with Gary and Nick. Don't worry. Thanks to our online friends, you all can catch the replay right after we go off the air. The link is already available through our social media sites, so head over to Facebook.com/CyrusWebb or go to Twitter.com/CyrusWebb. If you click on the link there, you can listen to the show completely for free and share it with your friends from there, too. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live today. You all make it a great one.